Hi, welcome to the video presentation of our paper titled A Taxonomy of Concerns Concerning Neural Art. AI-generated art or neural art is on the cusp of having a profound and perhaps an indelible impact on the very institution of art. As seen, there's a lot of hype around it. Well, whether this current phase we are in be judged as a watershed moment for creativity or the exact moment where we carelessly open the Pandora's box will be decided on how we carefully navigate certain concerns in the coming months. In this paper, we present a taxonomy of such concerns, spanning issues such as the blood diamond effect of unethically sourced datasets, the downstream effects of baked-in biases in these datasets, the rise of NFTs, large-scale theft, crawling, and Ghostwork associated with the generation process of the tools that is used by AI artists, Cliquishness and gatekeeping in the AI neural art community, and of course, the larger agenda of the computational conquest of gender and emotion. Now let us take a quick dive into the world of generating art. One could argue that the field of generative art has always evoked mixed emotions amongst the Puritans and critics alike. Works such as Why Love Generative Art have challenged the lack of romantic indulgence in the enterprise of chance, the misgivings on the joy of accidental discovery, the imperceptible facet, almost Gestaltian one can argue, of the very human institution of spontaneity, and this standard cliche that the generative artist has zero control and the autonomous machine is randomly generating these designs. Further, generative art historians have also drawn out examples from the Paleolithic ornamental art, hydraulically activated automata of ancient Rome, as well as the beautiful carvings that we found in Alhambra and the Renaissance clockwork figures as examples of works with generative processes as their basis that kind of in some ways challenges the very preconceived notion that all generative art is computer generated art. With regards to computer generated art, scholars have also highlighted the pioneering efforts of women artists in the 1960s and 70s led by the likes of Vera Molnar, Lillian Schwartz, Grace Hertlin, and Muriel Cooper to kind of challenge this very narrative of this male hagiographic tint that the field kind of has. With this background firmly in tow, let us now deep dive into the world of AI-generated neural art. The latest avatar of generative art, that is AI-generated neural art, we argue is a different beast altogether. In this paper, we present our nascent attempts towards reconstructing a taxonomy of these concerns. We hope that this will serve as a basis for further critique, examination, and betterment of the neural art community. Concern number 1, the blood diamond effect in neural art. We have previously critiqued that neural art produced with unethically sourced or biased large-scale datasets, much akin to the artistic expression in diamond jewelry, inherit a blood diamond effect in them. This critique, we argue, resonates far beyond the specific polemics of any specific large-scale vision dataset and refers to the wanton culture that permeates the general computer vision domain as we know it today. Baked-in biases. Adding to the woes emanating from the biases in the images is the latest trend of inculcating textual information gleaned from the internet that brings in a whole new vector of textual biases into the mix. In the figure that is presented in the slide, we see the images that were produced in response to the textual prompts using the Aleph image project that was based on the DALL-E model. And as seen, this profession to gender associative anchoring that is unfortunately observable in these images is yet another instance of the downstream effects of training on large terms of data gleaned from internet. In this figure, we see the effects of AI-assisted portrait generation model that has been trained mostly on the portraits of people of European descent. What is intriguing to us is that this blood diamond effect or the baked-in biases do not seem to be much of a deterrent or a deal breaker to some of the practitioners. We speculate that this cavalier approach is only going to be worsened and worsen soon enough by the lure of being able to monetize this generated art via the harnessing of NFTs or non-fungible tokens, an issue that we now address. The rise of NFTs. The selling of the NFT of the work titled Every Day is the First 5,000 Days by Mike Winkelmann, better known by his digital artist name Beeple, for $69 million, is widely considered to be the big watershed moment for this fledgling development in the art world. Even academic institutions have jumped onto the NFT bandwagon, with UC Berkeley recently announcing that it will auction NFTs of Nobel Prize winning inventions to fund university research. As AI artists navigate the difficult bylanes of extractive capitalism, they have to grapple with the cost of environmental impact vis-a-vis their innate aspirations towards financial stability and the ability to actually eke out a decent living. Works such as the ones presented here have amply explored the specifics of the environmental cost measured in both the carbon dioxide emissions and metrics such as the Ethereum Energy Consumption Index. Similarly, initiatives such as the Carbon.fii project, which is used to estimate the footprint for a specific Ethereum wallet or contract, and CryptoArt.wtf, which is used to estimate the footprint of a specific artwork, have emerged that will educate the artists about the downstream contributions towards climate change that has been demonstrated to disproportionately impact minorities and indigenous peoples. On the other hand, we observed intriguingly that many AI artists, and including Afrofuturists such as Dr. Netris Gaskins, have explored the possibility of NFT platforms such as Hackett Nook that operate on a supposedly more eco-friendly Tezos blockchain. And you might have seen several instances of these comparisons trending on the internet that kind of juxtapose the energy consumed by Bitcoin vis-a-vis Ethereum, vis-a-vis the Tezos blockchain. And I guess this green NFT revolution is sort of another intriguing development within the world of NFTs. Next, we address the issue of theft, crawling, and ghostwork. Well, we state that the question of theft emerges in two contexts: the atomized and the systemized. The atomized context pertains to scenarios where a specific art asset is subjected to an artistic manipulation process, perhaps using an AI model, thus birthing a secondary work that might not be transformative enough to merit assignment of the intellectual property rights associated with the original piece. Recently, we have seen the following 4 high-profile cases where this philosophical and legal debate of transformativeness of the secondary work has been brought into focus. Let us now explore each of these in some detail. Intriguingly, it was recently revealed that the video titled Arrival of a Train at La Ciotat, a popular, newly enhanced, de-olified video of a train arriving at a certain location, originally shot by Louis Lumiere, received a DMCA claim from YouTube and hence had to be deleted from the platform by its uploader, who happens to be a neural artist named Denis Shiryaev. Similarly, we have the Anti-Warhol Foundation for the Visual Arts versus Lynn Goldsmith case, where the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit ruled that the iconic print series that contained a series of silk screen prints and pencil illustrations created by Andy Warhol based on a 1981 photograph of the artist taken by the photographer Lynn Goldsmith actually fell outside of the ambit of the 4 fair use factors that are often considered, and ruled in fact in favor of the original photographer. Also, we have the issue of Lil Nas X versus Nike that entail questions of originality, IP rights, artistic license, and the passing and failings of the so-called Rogers test surrounding the customized satin shoes created from 666 pairs of Nike Air Max 97. And apparently these were created without Nike's prior approval or authorization by the American art collective MSCHF, and they had to withdraw its sales. Lastly, in the SpaceX collection issue on OpenSea platform, the platform objected to some digital artists using artifacts such as an official looking SpaceX banner to surreptitiously modify artwork that kind of wanted to give it the verisimilitude of emanating from an official SpaceX collection and decided to take it down. The systematized en masse theft context emerges when an artist or an institution scrapes large volumes of human-generated art from the internet with an intent for it to be ingested into some model training pipeline with no specific credit assigned to the human artists that generated the content, nor providing any avenues of revenue sharing. It is important to note that in 2019, the United States Court of Appeals denied LinkedIn's request to prevent HiQ, an analytics company, from scraping its data. This decision, we've heard, is kind of treated to be a historic moment in data privacy and data regulation era, and it showed that any data that is publicly available and not copyrighted is fair game for web crawlers. In the AI art world, there was a recent release of the jukebox model where the authors admitted that to train this model, we crawled the web to curate a new dataset of 1.2 million songs. Million. So many of these artists whose sweat equity went into the creation of this art, there is absolutely no pathway for them to get access to any of the earnings that might come through commercialization of this specific model. We note, however, that this mode of crawling-driven theft has been commendably called out by the AI neural art community, including the following statement presented here by a Google Magenta team researcher. Ghostwork. Associated with this issue of this theft is also the problem of ghost work, which is the theft of labor that is extracted from platforms such as Amazon Mechanical Turk. A recent article shed some light into the curation process behind a famous dataset that was recently released that claims to include the emotional impact of more than 50,000 artworks from the 15th century to the present, and one that entailed the use of more than 6,000 so-termed micro-workers. This work covered two important facets that we really need to unpack in the context of the critique being presented here. Firstly, there is the issue of the sanctity of the labeling itself. One of the micro-workers verbatim stated that, to be honest, a lot of it was very forced. There were many images that were just formless blobs of basic objects. It was quite a stretch to come up with emotions and explanations at times. Phrenology, physiognomy, and computational eugenics are undergoing a silent rebirth emboldened by the rise of computer vision-aided psychonomics. Well, deep learning-aided models that claim to perform so-called high-accuracy gender classification, high-accuracy emotion classification, and high-accuracy race and ethnicity classification trained on carelessly curated datasets that promulgate nothing more than prototyping and reductionist caricatures are all unanimously frowned upon in the AI ethics community. However, those very datasets and tools actually now find a new safe haven under the banner of creative pursuit. Here in the slide, we see tools that allow an artist to explore and create and manipulate the images and the imagery associated with these precise dimensions of emotion, race, and gender that is frowned upon in the AI ethics community, and rightfully so. Our specific fear pertains to the emergence of gender as now a mere vector of exploration in some latent space of these generative models, and well, a fear that also gets amplified in the face of visibility enhancing endeavors such as gender spectrum collection that now risks being appropriated and pushed into these horrendous deep learning aided computer vision pipelines that can then be used to indulge in further heinous practices such as woke washing and ethics washing for corporate systems. We have distilled our specific fear surrounding the emergence of gender as a vector of exploration in these latent spaces of the so-called deep generative models that are used in art pipelines in the form of a premonitory conjecture called the HSAS conjecture, which stands for Any Gender Expression Stock Photo as a Service conjecture, that reads as presented in the slide here. Lastly, we cover the issue of cliquishness and homophily. Well, homophily is a deeply human construct, and the associated enterprise of community building, when done well, can be wonderfully delightful in creating a safe and nourishing space for exchange of ideas. However, human history has taught us time and again that fetishizing over snobbery, hierarchy, and constructs such as those can quickly precipitate into cliquish echo chambers replete with gatekeeping histrionics that eventually poisons the community and births more and more of toxic hierarchy. In the following slides, we'd like to address this gatekeeping in the backdrop of unraveling of the associated mythology of the creative genius. We argue that there exists a mountain of evidence that the bigger source of the perceived worthiness of an art piece in the marketplace of art is the network effect and not the make-believe innate chutzpah or the creative wizardry of that specific art piece or that artist. Beginning with the monologue seen on the left, titled "Artists Become Famous Through Their Friends, Not the Originality of Their Work," to the work that's seen on the right, which is titled "Fame as an Illusion of Creativity. Evidence from the Pioneers of Abstract Art." We have seen academically stress-tested evidence of how shrewd social networking, either at high society events, historically have been the key to an artist's emergence on the scene, all under the facade of the so-called creative spirit. With that said, we argue that the maintenance of the cliques of the gifted and the godfathers while maintaining this mirage of meritocracy requires creating highly selective exhibits and gatherings where the submissions are reviewed under two instruments of deceit: a single blind review process combined with an opaque no reviews provided mechanism. The first allows for direct gatekeeping, the second ensures the secrecy of where the goodness of the so-called good art emanates from, thus maintaining the godfatherdom as explored in the previous slides. We now expand upon these two processes in further detail. Single blind review process. This helps create an information asymmetric marketplace of ideas where the reviewers have the privilege of knowing precisely who the authors are, but not vice versa. This makes it easier to enact targeted exclusion by drumming up some reasonable sounding pseudo-intellectual reasons as to why the work that is submitted was not up to mark, while maintaining the shroud of secrecy on who it is that took the decision to decide so. Other art forms poisoned by this form of gatekeeping are slowly unshackling themselves. In the paper on the left, the authors demonstrate how introducing blind auditions, where there was a screen involved between the auditioner and the judges in orchestras, did markedly raise the probability that a woman would be advanced and hired into the orchestra. Further, in the context of academic peer-reviewed articles, works such as the one on the right have demonstrated how instituting double-blind reviews was a watershed moment towards increased representation of female authors, especially in the areas of ecology and evolution. However, unfortunately, in our own personal experience, even in the presence of double-blind peer-reviewed workshops at ICML, NeurIPS, ICLR that we have submitted to and got our work accepted, these AI creativity workshops continue to be weirdly adamant on this facet, which we argue does not bode well for the community at large. This feedback is evidently invaluable to not just one's own artistic techniques in the next iteration, but to also learn from the critique that the other submissions elicited. In this regard, we'd like to implore the organizers of these workshops to give Schmidt et al.'s 10 considerations for open peer review a thorough read and consider utilizing platforms such as Open Review for future editions. To conclude this video, I present this image from my co-author ACNX that also incorporates certain specific implementable solutions to increase harmony and inclusiveness in the community. Thank you so very much.
My name is ECNX, better known as Gonna Go Global. I'm a San Francisco native, artist, actor, more recently activist, and this appeal is to the tech community. Hopefully all is well and this message reaches you in good spirits. Black faces in tech spaces is essential to moving forward. It's essential to making a difference. When you think about tech, you think about intellect. And when you integrate people intellectually, sky is the limit. As far as being an artist in the Bay Area, I feel this is home to many of the biggest platforms, whether it be YouTube, whether it be Apple. These are huge platforms for artists, but the artists are not reaping the benefits. It would be great to create dialogue, actions, and relief so that talent within the Bay Area can go beyond the Bay Area. You understand what I'm saying? So that we can be a force to be reckoned with, especially in the hip hop community, because the culture here is beautiful, it's vibrant, and it can be seen and felt throughout the nation. But it's time for us to take control of that narrative. Also, when you think about movies, when you think about series, when you think about entertainment in general, it's a way for people to tell their story, to get their narrative apart. This is essential. But that's just the surface. Behind closed doors, we do need more engineers. Behind closed doors, we do need more designers. Behind closed doors, we do need tech to be integrated so that it is not a resemblance of the 1910s or the 1920s. It needs to be updated, no different than everything else, right? So hopefully this message reaches the viewer, the listener, in good spirits, and we can create that space. Anybody need details? They're all available. This is just a brief summary of what's going on. Again, thank you for your time, thank you for your patience, and remember, life is phenomenal.